begin. I'm going to lay out my waistband like this with the pattern on, just so I can emphasize a couple of really important pieces here. So remember that the majority of you for the skirt, I asked you to widen your waistband just by about an inch or so, or 3 centimeters, just because the waistband I found with this pattern is way too small. So you want to line it up like this and make sure that your notches, so the pattern is facing up, number one, and that the bottom edge here is on the bottom edge of your pattern piece or of your fabric. So your fabric's already been interfaced, so you interfaced it, you zigzagged it, and now I'm just going to re-emphasize the notches. So there's a notch here, there, so make sure that you cut into that. And here, there are little markings. So these markings for the skirt, as well as for the culotte, represent the side seams. So here is one. So you use that and you mark it there on the back with your marking paper, and your tracing wheel. Then here, so here's the center front line, but there are 2 notches here that need to be marked. Remember, only going in about a 1/2 centimeter. Again, another marking here, so that's been done. And finally here. Now, there's one extra special marking that you have to do. Does anyone know what that is? Any guesses what that's for? So that is for a buttonhole. So you're actually going to be making a buttonhole on this. So you are going to mark this on the top side, so on your actual fabric. So on the right side of it, see, I just put the marking paper underneath there and I marked it out. So I don't know if you can see that really well. So there's a line and the 2 ends. So it looks like a capital I, just like here. So you're going to mark those perfectly onto the actual fabric, just like that. So now I'm going to take my pattern piece off. You know what? I think we need that light on. Is it too dark? Just we're trying to do it for step, but yeah. Okay. So again, this piece here, the markings like a little capital I. So hopefully that everything, when you interfaced it, nothing really shrunk and everything matches up nicely. We make it all work anyway. But now remember that your pattern piece, so when you have, here's our skirt, so there's the back with the zipper, and here's the front. So remember there are 2 notches here, so on the center front, and those match up with this one. Then your markings that you did here on the back will match up with your side seams. The same here, your other marking, and then you're going to have another notch here and here that will match up on the back. So I'm going to just open up the zipper. I just find it easier to work with. And I'm going to lay this down like that, and I'm going to start matching up these notches. So here we are. So I can see my front too. So I'm going to match them up here and here. So I'm going to pin them in place. So pin them in place first, just so then, here. You may have to move them around a little bit, but so I pin those 2. Now I'm going to pin my side seam. So it's looking pretty good so far. Because sometimes as you sew, sometimes your waist can stretch out a little bit on you. So far this is looking pretty good. So I'm going to put my needle right through the center of that, and then it should match up with the center, or with your side seam, with the center of the seam. And here, pin it. And then here, you want to make sure that your darts are going towards the center back. So there's your zipper, and I'm going to point them this way. So I'm going to pin them in place, just so they don't move. So pinning here, and it gets pretty thick depending on your fabric. And another pin. And I'm going to do that at the front too. So I'm going to pin all of my seam allowances to the darts towards the center back if they're on the back, and towards the center front if they're on the front. Okay, so then there was another notch there. So now I'm going to do the same thing but on the other side. So I'm just there's the center front, and here is my one there. So that's one of my darts, so I'm going to push it towards the center front. That. Here's the other one, but first I'm going to match up that other side seam. So there's the marking. Here's my side seam. So in through the X, in through my side seam, So it takes a little bit of time. Also too, if you want, you could put 2 pins, so a pin on one side of the seam allowance at the side seam and the other, just so it remains nice and flat when you're sewing it. So again, I'm doing another dart. So this is the dart at the center front, or the one, I think it's the left front side. So again, this is just getting super thick, so I'm just using the table to help that push it through. And then here. So you should have an overhang on this side by 1.5. That's what you want. So see how at the end, it's 1.5. So I'm going to pin this. So it worked out nicely. It doesn't always work out the best because sometimes interfacing can shrink your waistband a little bit, or depending on your fabric. Or it can be cutting. Okay, almost done. So I'm just pinning those dart seam allowances towards the center back. So it's on. So you'll notice, so this is the left side, and then you'll have the right side. Notice how that, on that side, has an extension. So that's normal. You're supposed to have an extension like that, because that will tuck under and you'll actually have your button on there. So it's going to be about 1.5 inches on the one side. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the machine. Everything is pinned. And I'm going to line it up. So A, 2.5. Make my pattern out of the way. Yep. So here, remember here from that distance, see how it's 1.5? So the end of that zipper stopper to the end, that's good. That's what you want. So now I'm going to put this at 1.5 because you want your zipper to end at the right spot when you zip it up. Okay, so needle down and in and back it up. So this is the part. It's a little thick, so just take your time here. All right, off we go. Get my position. So double checking underneath that everything lies flat and you're staying at 1.5. Really make sure, push that out of the way because sometimes the fabric likes to kind of push up this way on you. And take it slow if your fabric is thick. So here I'm making sure that that's lying nice and flat, my side seam. So the seam allowance to my side seam. My seam allowances to my darts. So pulling this around as I go, making sure it's out of the way. A while. This is like an armhole. When you do the armholes, like you're connecting an arm to, or a sleeve to the bodice of your garment, it takes a long time. So I'm going to just make sure that this is lying flat because that seam allowance is folding on me. I can feel it. Okay, we're almost done. So making sure 1.5, you're there, so then the zipper ends at the right spot. And back stitch. Okay. All right, so we'll call that part 1, okay? Okay. So then here it is. So let's see. This is the part where I go, okay, please, nothing. So I flip this up to look. So pretty good. Yeah. So no puckers or anything like that, because a lot of times, sometimes. No, looks good.
The fabric color is different. It's just
No.